Hi, it's Alistair at Electric Scotland. It's me do my newsletter for May the 10th, 2019. The main Electric Scotland news this week is really about the Brexit Party. I took it from the Daily Express because they also did a poll which got 48,000 odd people voting in it. So I think that's, usually most polls take maybe a couple of thousand, if that. So I thought, having got 48,000 to do the poll, I thought that's a pretty big slice, and I thought this got some credibility because of the numbers. So I've made that the kind of main news article within the site. Now, when it comes to the other news stories, let's see. I'm picking up Who's Afraid of Chlorinated Chicken. The reason I thought I'd highlight this story is that talking about a free trade deal with the USA, someone mentioned somewhere, but they allow chlorinated chicken. Do you really want to eat chlorinated chicken, they said? And of course they'll say that America will impose that on us if we do a free trade deal with them. Well, this article kind of shows what's behind chlorinated chicken. And so I feel if you read that story, you'll be able to kind of talk intelligently about this when friends are discussing it with you. So, and that came from briefingforbrexit.com. So, I just thought, well, there's so many fear stories going around all over the place that to get someone talking intelligently about something is always good. Okay, Tories call for unity after election drubbing. Well, obviously we had the local council elections in England, Wales, and certainly the Conservative lost something like 1,300 councillors, so it's a huge loss. Labour also lost some, but not nearly as many. But one would have expected at this time that Labour would have gained, but they actually lost as well. So it's about a pox on all your houses, basically. The big winners were the Liberal Democrats, and to some extent the Greens, but also a big gain for independents. I will say I'm not reading too much into the fact that Lib Dems made big inroads. Because after all, the two big parties, Conservative and Labour, if you're wanting to kind of show them you don't think they're doing very well, who the heck do you vote for? And really there's no Brexit party for these council elections, so it had to be one of the other parties. And I think by default that's where a lot of the Lib Dems probably got their votes from, although I think as a serious contender next elections, they won't be anywhere near that. But obviously they're saying, oh yeah, we've won big time. I think that's a red herring, to be honest with you. But anyway, the article's there for you to have a read at. The next one I found was Out. It says, for the third time running, our survey finds a record proportion of party members wanting May gone now. This is from the Conservative Home. So as it's a Conservative newspaper, one would hopefully get more of the truth out of that. Then next story is Fed Up Canada tells the US to help with China crisis or forget about favours. It says Canada is leaning on the United States to help settle dispute with China, which has started to block imports of vital Canadian commodities amid a dispute over a detained Huawei executive. Canada's having a tough time there, I will say, and I think states should do something for sure. Then the true test of Brexit opinion will come on May the 23rd. It says the Brexit Party is an impressively slick operation. This is coming from CapX, who I've always said I've a great deal of time for. Next story is Pamela Steer named Canada's CFO of the Year. The organisation was dealing with a crushing $14 billion deficit. Now, only a few years later, the WSIB boasts a surplus of several $billion. That's a massive turnaround. So good on her, and I think you should try and read that and learn more about how she went about doing that. The Edinburgh entrepreneurs churning out butter that's taking the capital's food scene by storm is the next story. A recently launched Edinburgh-based butter company has become so popular it now supplies some of the capital's top hotels, restaurants and delis. So that's a great story there. In fact, if you took that story and replicated it in Canada, maybe a Canadian company could do something. Peterborough by-election is the next story I've got for you, because the Brexit Party has unveiled a secret millionaire, Mike Green, as their candidate. And it's highly likely he'll win that, and that means that'll be the first Brexit MP sitting in Westminster. And he's quite a character, so we want to read that story. It came from the Express. Then, another one that took my eye, which is the final story of this week, is billionaire Jeff Bezos to unveil plans for moon presence. It says, billionaire entrepreneur Jeff Bezos will unveil plans on Thursday for missions to the moon, tailored to the US government's renewed push to establish a lunar outpost in just 5 years. I think that's great news. I love anything like that, you know. I mean, if it's settlement on Mars, I'm all for it. Settlement on the moon, I'm all for it. Okay, so anyway, that's the news stories I picked for you this week. Now on to Electric Canadian. I'm continuing with the Canadian Horticulturalist, and I've got volume 25, which is the 1902 issue, up. Then I've got John Brown in Canada, a monograph by James Cleland Hamilton. This is about the anti-slavery movement, of which John Brown was quite a major player. And so we're telling you what he did in Canada. Next story is a short history of Court Pride of Ontario, number 5640 of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, 1871 to 1896. It's the Ancient Order of Foresters, compiled and written by John B. Buckingham, who is the Secretary of Court, with introduction by J. Watson Steed, who is the editor of the Ancient Foresters. Interesting organisation, because this is like the friendly companies, insurance companies, start off them, and so to get a wee insight into how they evolved is certainly of interest. Then I've also got a record of the founding of the Royal Canadian Academy. It's by His Excellency the Marquess of Lorne and Her Royal Highness the Princess Louise, and the Constitution. It's produced in 1891. So I thought that was quite an interesting wee article, that one. Then the Hutterites in Canada. I found a really good new video about them, and I've added that to a page about the Mennonites and Hutterites. So it's about an hour long, well worth viewing, I think, but I'll leave that to you to decide. And I've also started a new section for Russians in Canada. So, as you know, I'm gradually building up ethnic histories, so I can tell you about how people came to Canada and how they evolved and so forth. So I'm tackling the Russians this week. Then finally, Conrad Black has a couple of articles. It says the case for a wealth tax in Canada. It's the first story. And then Trump looks solid for 2020 is his second story. Conrad Black is really a big supporter of Donald Trump. And he has some reasons for being a supporter. And if you read his story, maybe you'll have a slightly different view about the guy. Okay, so on to Electric Scotland. I've got the last volume of the Scottish Review up, which is volume 36, July-October 1900. So that's the last one I've been able to get hold of. So again, there's always great stories in there, and you want to read through the index and just scroll down to any stories you're interested in. And then the Folklore Society. I found volume 1, which you can get to at the end of our page, which is just below the other folklore ones we've been doing, which I'm now finished with. And I've got a sketch of John Lee, DD, MD, etc., etc. The very Reverend, the Principal of the University of Edinburgh. He was born in 1779 and died in 1859. It's by Sir John Rosa Cormack, and it's a PDF, and basically he's a certainly interesting character, and of course being principal of one of our major universities is always of interest. And then here's a different one I found, The Prince of Monaco's Kitchen. The Prince of Monaco, of course, he married Grace Kelly, the American actress. But I was actually watching, just for pure pleasure, it was a video on the chef that works for the Queen in Buckingham Palace and Balmoral and whatnot. And at the end of that, it offered the next one, which is The Prince of Monaco's Kitchen. And so I just thought I'd watch it out of interest. And I really enjoyed it. I got to learn that balsamic vinegar can be brilliant. I mean, the chef there actually goes into Italy to get his balsamic vinegar, and apparently it costs a fortune, but it's very interesting to see how they make it, and how they've got phenomenal reserves there in their accommodation that they have. I mean, there's some there that they don't actually sell, it's just held for the family. Yeah, but it's really interesting. And they also do the hams as well. And it's really interesting to see them making the hams and how they're processed and everything. So I don't know, I really just enjoyed it very much, and I thought, well, I'll share it. So I put it up in our community. So if you might like to watch that. And then I found a book, At Home in Fiji. It's by Gordon Cumming. It's produced in 1896. It says in the autumn of 1874, it was announced that Fiji had been formally annexed by Great Britain. In January 1875, the Honourable Sir Arthur Hamilton Gordon, son of George IV Earl of Aberdeen, was appointed first governor of Fiji. And this is obviously a story relating to his findings and what he did there. So that's part of the Commonwealth. I thought maybe you might be interested in having a read of that. And then I found an interesting two-part film. It's The Navigators, Pathfinders of the Pacific. It's a public broadcast one, and so the link I've given to you is to go to the archive where it is, but you can actually make it full screen, so it's a lot easier to watch perhaps. But it says in two parts, and you get to both of them. The link I give you there. And then the next book I picked was A Story of Active Service in Foreign Lands. It's compiled from letters sent home from South Africa. India and China, 1856 to 1882, by Surgeon General A. Graham Young. So I love these kind of biographies, I must confess, and writings. So, and then the next one I've got is 1746 Dress Act and its effect on the culture of the Gael, basically. A contribution from Beth of the Newfangled Family Tree, because she kindly sent it in to me. She's apparently intending to serialise that in one of her clan newsletters that she does. but she thought I might like to put the whole thing up, so she sent me a PDF file of it. So that's up on our Tartans page, so I'll give you the link for that. Then I got the Hilton newsletter. You know, this is a couple that are living up in Caithness and working at Highlands and Islands University there. And he's been home to the States, but he's back again. He got back in time for Christmas. And so he's telling us how he spent his Christmas with his two daughters. Apparently came over to spend Christmas with them. So lots of great wee pictures there. And kids feeding the reindeers and everything. So I don't know, it's always an enjoyable read, that. So it's from Christmas 2018 to about the spring of 2019. Then the next book I have for you is Henry Drummond. I added this evangelist, biologist, writer and lecturer to our Significant Scots section. In actual fact, one of the books he wrote sold over 12 million copies over many years, of course, but apparently it made a huge difference to people's lives. So I've also given you a link to his book so you can read it as well. And there's an audio reading of his book, and I've given you a link to that as well. So I hope generally you'll enjoy reading it. Then I came across an address of John Marshall. He's president of the Royal Medical and Chirurgical Society of London, and this was done at the annual meeting in March the 1st, 1883, in which he gives some mini bios of deceased fellows of the society, some of which are Scots, but many others, of course, actually, although they're not Scots, actually learned their trade in Scotland. Because at that time Edinburgh was the preeminent place for medical knowledge, basically. So, another good wee read. Then I have the memoir of the Honourable George Keith Elphinstone, KB, Viscount Keith, Admiral of the Red. It's by Alexander Allardyce. This is a really excellent book, and frankly I'm amazed at what he achieved. I've actually read the entire book. It took me a good day and a half, I think, to read through it all, but I just kept reading because I love these kind of biographies, and it's just amazing how involved they were in world affairs, essentially. Okay, and then the final thing I've got for you is the one that came in just this morning, was junior tour guides. It's junior tour guides and junior rangers deliver performances and support projects at 10 of Historic Environment Scotland sites across the country, from Walkway to Melrose. So, from the borders of Scotland to the Upper Islands, Orkneys and Shetlands. And it's about half an hour, so it's quite a big one. And it shows you the kids getting dressed up in period costume and giving wee tours and telling the visitors about the places. So, I don't know, I thought it was quite a charming wee story, so you can view that with the link I've given you. And then the story. Departed a little again from my history lessons, but basically we've every reason to be optimistic and confident about Brexit Britain. Says Liam Fox has been a Conservative MP since 1992 and has held a variety of cabinet and shadow cabinet posts. He's been Secretary of State for International Trade since July 2016. He gave this talk, and I just thought, I thought for the first time in maybe not the first time, but it's quite rare that you get a really good review of how Britain's performing in the world and how we're doing domestically in relation to other countries of the world. And I just thought it was great. I mean, I read the whole thing, I kept finding out things, and I just thought it was great. So I thought I'd make that the story, so if you've got British antecedents, you can be proud of the country, and obviously you should have more faith in how we can do if we just leave with a no deal. But whether that'll ever happen, I don't know. But certainly the big story that overall is the Brexit Party. They're starting to get big donors coming in from ex-Tory donors. So everyone at the moment seems like they're going to win by quite a big margin the European elections in 2 weeks' time. But can I remind everyone that the last general election we had, the Tories were at 20% lead. They were going to just wipe the floor of everyone. And because of stupid Theresa May, who made big boo-boos in her talks at that time, they ended up losing seats. So you can't guarantee, because there's a big lead now, that we'll have a big lead when the election happens. But nevertheless, it seems a bit stupid that we're having an election when we're trying to leave. So anyway, so I thought I'd put that story in because it's very positive about Britain, and there's not enough positive stories going around. So I found this one and I thought you might enjoy reading it. And I've also given you a link at the end of it to our community where I've got a new Brexit conference, our Brexit forum basically. So I've also given you a link to that because you can see a couple of the rousing speeches that Nigel Farage is giving. So there you go. That's it for that this week. I hope you enjoyed reading some of that, and as always I'd love to have your comments, and if you like anything I put, feel free to copy it to others. If you think they might be interested or not sure about Brexit, if you send them a copy of this newsletter and maybe read something and be a bit more confident about the country. Okay, thanks for listening once again, and have a good weekend when it comes. Cheers.